Hey guys, thank you all so much for being here. I'm Adam Thomas. If you don't already know, I'm a tattoo artist from the UK. If you're not subscribed to my channel, make sure to click the subscription button, click the little bell icon, and that's going to get you notified of whenever I post a new video. Today's going to be a good one. Today we're going to look at setting up a COIL tattoo machine. So, the machine that I'm going to be using today, this is the Mickey Sharp's hybrid tattoo machine. I use this for a good many years, both for color packing and soft shading. It's a very versatile machine. If you don't have one and you're looking at buying a COIL tattoo machine, it's a great all-rounder. So we're going to go through setting the machine up, needle bars, grips, all of that. First thing we're going to do is we're going to bang on some gloves. This is mainly just out of habit. Whenever you're handling anything that's sterilized in a blister pack, that you're using gloves, it's going to make sure that you're not cross-contaminating and making anything dirty. Jewelry, make sure you're taking all that off. It's a big place where bacteria and things like that is going to hang out. So make sure you're taking that off and make sure you've got clean hands. Right, so the first thing we're going to set up is the grip. So you've got a couple of options with grips. You can either get the full disposable grips. These come completely put together, so you've got the grip on there plus the whole tube. These are great if you're trying to keep everything nice and clean, because obviously these are fully disposable, so once you're finished, go straight in the bin. You're not having to worry about sterilizing stuff because they come pre-sterilized and they're single use. Downside to them is because it's a full solid plastic tube and you're putting it into a heavy metal machine. Once that's put onto the vise, what's going to happen is the weight of the machine is just going to pull back. It's going to bend that plastic tube and it's just going to cause a bit of extra friction on the needle bar. It's great if needs must. For me, I never really got on with them. For me, it's always been steels. So this is basically just a solid steel grip. This is going to do a few things. Obviously, it's going to give you something nice and comfy to hold on to. The rough outer edge, once you've got Vaseline and ink and stuff on your hands, it means it's not going to slip out your hand. The other big upside to these, it's going to help balance out your machine. So because you've got your big copper coils and your heavy metal frame, having that block of steel on the front there, it's just going to help just balance that out. So once it's on your hand, you're not just back end heavy. It's going to try and balance things out a little bit. So we've got the steel grip on here. We've got two little grub screws. That's going to hold our tip and it's going to hold our back stem. So the back stem that I'm going to be using is just a stainless steel one. So we're going to pop that in about halfway-ish. It's not massively important and you'll get used to how you like your tips and steel ratio to be. For me, this is roughly where I'd normally have it. Grab your Allen keys. These are a great investment if you're just starting out with tattooing. Buy yourself a good set of Allen keys. You'll end up using mainly just one Allen key, but it's great if you're having to strip machines down and stuff like that. So you want to make sure you got your grub screws on the top. Get your Allen key and just tighten that up. You don't want to over tighten it because you'll end up taking the head off the grub screw, especially because it's going into a steel back stem, but just enough so it's not going to rotate and it's not going to come out during the tattoo process. So the tips that I'm going to be using are plastic disposable tips. These come in a little blister pack. So this is a flat 9. So this one's going to hold a 9 mag or a 9 flat shader. So a little tip to pop them out, you want to make sure that you're pushing on the larger end, not the tip. So what's going to happen is if you've got a slightly more delicate tip here, you try and push that through the plastic, there's every chance you might break it. The bit at the back is a bit more solid, so it's going to help just push through, just break that paper. So we'll just pop that out and get rid of that. This larger end is what's going to go into the grip. So again, we're going to slide that in and just give us a little bit of space between the rinse hole and the steel grip. It's going to give us a little bit of room then just to get to balance on our finger once we get everything set up. So again, we want to orientate that to the top and we'll just tighten that up just until it pinches and it's not going to move. With this being plastic, what you don't want to do is over tighten it, because what it's going to do is just squash that plastic down, make the space inside the tip just that little bit smaller, and it's going to increase the chance of your needle getting stuck on that. The main reason why I've always had my grub screws at the top is because the way the needle bar is going to run through, it's going to be closer to the bottom of the tube. So what you don't want, you don't want the bottom of the tube bending up, which potentially could interfere with the needle. You've got a lot more space towards the top, so I've always had my grub screws at the top. So that is in essence how we're going to set up our grip, tip and back stem. The needle that we're going to be using today for this demonstration is a 9 mag. This is also a curved mag, so I'll go into needle configurations in a later video, but basically a 9 round mag or curved mag, you've got a row of 5 needles on the bottom, you've got a row of 4 stacked on top, and on the edge what you'll find on the curved mags is that a little bit like your fingers, you'll have the edges that will just be tapered in a little bit, so a little bit shorter. What that's going to do is when you're doing soft shading, it's going to reduce the amount of catches on the edge, so you're not going to get mag marks. It's just going to give you a nice sort of softer airbrush finish to your work. The best way to pop these out is just using the eye loop at the top. You don't want to be trying to get through the paper with the needles, because what you're going to do is end up bending them and throwing them all out of whack. So with the eye loop, just pop that through and it should pop straight out. So the first thing you want to do with the needles is just check to make sure that none of the needles are barbed, so like hooked. What's going to happen if you do have those is you'll hit the skin, it's going to start tearing it up, and it's just going to, one, cause your client a lot of pain, and it's going to give you a really terrible tattoo. So it's definitely worth having a look. You can get eye loops to have a proper good detailed look at these. For me, I've never found them too useful. For me, just running your fingers over, you can quite quickly feel if there's any barbs there, and just a little visual check is more than enough. The way needles are made today, they're very precisely made, so it's not very often you're going to get a bad needle. So we're going to want to put a little bend in the needle. This is going to create some tension in the bar and make the needle sit true and flat on the tip. When you're looking at the needle bar, you'll notice that the needles are soldered to the bottom of the needle bar. So by holding just above the needles and the eye loop at the top, we're just going to give it a little bend in the middle. Not a massive dramatic 90-degree bend, but just enough of a curve so that once we put the bands on at the end, it's going to compress that bend down just that little bit, and it's going to just force these needles to sit nice and flush against the base of the tip, and it's going to stop them from flopping around and doing things we don't want them to do. So with that nice bend in there, the only other thing that I'd look at doing is I tend to just run my thumbnail just at the base of the needles, which just stops the 2 rows of the mags being so separate and just pulls them that little bit tighter. And for me, it's just allowed me to get a much neater, much more accurate tattoo once I get into the shading process. To get the needle bar into the tube setup, we're just going to let gravity do the work, because there's going to be a slight gap in the middle between the plastic tip and the back stem. If you try and force that through, chances are you're going to get caught in the middle and you're going to end up just barbing your needles, which we don't want to do. So we're just going to drop that in there, give it a little bit of a shake, make sure that we're orientated the right way at the bottom, and then gravity just lets that drop straight the way through. Just have a little check just to make sure that the bottom of the needles is on the bottom of the tube. So where we were looking at the needle bar, with the needles soldered on the bottom, you want to make sure that they are always at the bottom, otherwise they're not going to run flat and true on the bottom of the tip. Grab our machine, trying to make sure that the vise is undone. We're just going to feed that through. So we want to get this to a point where we've got enough play to be able to get the eye loop over the front of the armature bar. Just going to tighten up a little bit just so it won't slip out. So one of the little tricks that I found over the years is sometimes the grommet that you have on the front of the armature bar can just be that little bit too tight to get the eye loop over, or the eye loop's a little bit too tight to go over the grommet. The best thing to do is if you just pop the grommet off and just feed that grommet through the eye loop, so then you've almost got the needle bar with the grommet in. That way you're not trying to squeeze it over the top, and then when you try and attach that now to the armature bar, it should just slip over really nice and easy. It's going to save you a few extra minutes and a lot of headaches. So at this point, with everything being attached, we just want to sort out how much the needle is going to hang out. So the way we're going to do that is holding on to the machine in our hand and the grip. We're just going to undo the vise a little bit, which is going to give us a little bit of movement with the grip. We're going to get our thumb and we're just going to push down on the armature bar until it hits the top of the coil. That's going to, in essence, have the machine in its on position, so the needles would be sticking out, which is the furthest they're going to travel. Once we can see how far they're going to stick out, we just want to wiggle the grip until we get the needle sticking out exactly how far we want to go, which is going to be the depth that we're going to be hitting the skin. So there's two ways you can look at this. You've got running from the tube, which means you're going to have that tube pretty much just on the skin, or you're going to be running off the tip, which means you're going to be running off the tip of your needles and you're going to be controlling the depth by hand. We'll go into the pros and cons of those in a later video, but for now I'm just going to set this up to how I usually work. So we'll just have a quick look just to make sure that everything's lined up nice at the bottom. Sometimes you can find that the needles are soldered slightly at an angle, so just by looking down the tube you can just make sure that they're going to be running as flat and flush to the bottom of the tube as possible. And then we'll just tighten up that vise. You want to go too wild, just enough again to make sure that this isn't going to spin and isn't going to move. You don't want to, completely wrench that shut, or otherwise after a day's worth of tattooing you're just not going to be able to open that back up. So now that we've got the needle bar fully connected, we've got the grip exactly where we want it to be. We can see that bend that we put into the needle bar has got the needle bar running in the top sort of section of the tube. What we want to do is going to put some elastic bands around that just to pull it down, give us that tension, and it's just going to make sure that the needles are running nice and flush and true to the bottom of the tip. These bands that I've got, these are just some small standard elastic bands. I've got 3 on there. Sometimes you can find if you're doing a long session, the bands tend to snap sometimes. So if you've got more than one band on there, it means you're not going to have any major issues. If band comes off, you can just add one on, but you've got a couple of backups on there as well. So pop those bands round. I like to make sure that they're not twisted, so you're not causing any extra tension and you're getting a nice even pull on those bands. You want to make sure that the tension is nice and even, otherwise it could be pulling the needle in weird and wonderful directions. So with those bands on there, you can see straight away that the needle bar, instead of being in that top section of the back stem, it's now running pretty much perfectly in the middle. So that means that bend that we put in is pulled a lot straighter, which means it's going to be putting extra tension on the needles at the tip, then creating a nice flush finish so that the needles aren't going to be flopping around and spraying ink everywhere. So with all that set up there, that's exactly how I'd set up my machine. You can see that the balance with the steel grip just means that that's not going to fall out of your hand, and it's going to stop any fatigue on your wrists. The amount that I've got the tip stuck out at the bottom means I've got a little bit of play to be able to rest it on my finger, and the amount that I've got the back stem means that it's just sticking out the top of the vise, and I've got just a little bit of play between the machine and the grip to allow it just to sit nicely on my hand. So taking the machine apart, so stripping down at the end of the tattoo, is basically what we've just done in reverse, but with a little bit more care. So at this point you've technically got a dirty bit of equipment. So the way to break down a machine, just take the bands off. That's going to release this needle. We just pop off the needle bar and the grommet. That's going to release this needle down. Now taking extra care not to go near this end. We just want to support the grip, loosen off the vise, and then just carefully taking that out. That way we can take the machine away, make sure that's nice and sterilized. Take out the needle from the tube setup. That goes straight into the sharp spin. Take our Allen key, undo the grub screw, take out the tube, and then that goes straight into our clinical waste bin. And then what we're left with is our steel grip and back stem. So we take out the back stem, and that's everything stripped down. So from this point, we take this and this, we go into our clean room. We give both of these a good scrub, get rid of any particles, put them in the ultrasonic cleaner, which will rattle out any little bits of dried on ink and blood. We'll bag and tag them, put them in the autoclave, and that's going to sterilize them ready for the next client. So there you go guys, that was setting up a tattoo machine. Hopefully you found something interesting. It was nice for me to set up a coil machine. I haven't done it for a while. I mainly use rotaries and I use a cartridge system, which we'll go into on a later video. But yeah, that is everything you need to know about setting up a tattoo machine. If there is anything else you think that I might have missed or you want to know about, just drop it in the comments and I'll try my best to answer any questions in later videos. If you did enjoy the video, make sure to drop me a like and subscribe to my channel. Make sure you're clicking the bell to get notified of all my latest videos. And with all that being said, thank you all so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and we'll see you on the next video. Peace.